Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello and welcome to Friday. Congratulations to us. We've made it through another week. It is the 22nd of May 2026. I hope you've had a good week. I just inhaled a Twix bar, so I'm literally going to talk really fast. I have so much to tell you. Now, one thing I wanted to clarify from the last episode, I was talking about my Chelsea FOMO, and I said I would talk a bit more about it on Friday's episode. Well, I actually listened back to the episode to remind myself what I'd said. And I went on, I think, to actually just talk about all the things that I would have talked about tonight. So I'm not going to repeat myself because I'm pretty much not going to say any more than I said on Tuesday, to be honest. But one thing I do want to clarify was the SIC code, which I think I made a hash of that. It actually stands for Standard Industrial Classification. And it's very, very exciting news that we've got that. So well done to the flowers from the farm and also the MP who pushed it all through. So that is amazing. Now, I started the week in coats, boots, basically the wrist warmers, the neck warmer, absolutely everything. And I was super, super cold. And I've ended the week in shorts and my little pumps. And as a result, I got completely stung to death on the field tonight because of my wonderful living paths, which I hadn't realised just how full of nettles and thistles and sharp things they were. And I discovered, I discovered that tonight. So they definitely need shearing to the ground. So today has been a really hot day, first day of a heat wave that we've got. And the temperatures just seem to be creeping higher and higher according to all the apps. Next week, I think we're looking at 32 degrees centigrade on Monday and Tuesday, which is just horrendous. It's great to have the sun back, don't get me wrong. It's just not so great that the temperatures go up so quickly. Now, years ago, nearly 20 years ago, actually, I went to live on a Greek island when I was having a sort of crisis in my life, and I thought it would be a good idea. And it was great fun. The point I'm getting at is that out there, the temperature goes up by, 1 degree every day or something, or 2 degrees every day. So by the time you get to August, you are kind of acclimatized it like a frog in water that you gradually bring to the boil as opposed to just chucking it in a pan of boiling water. And so you just get used to it and your tolerance builds up to it. And by the beginning of September, those of us who were working out there were already back in our jumpers, which the tourists, when they came out, thought was absolutely hilarious and quite frankly ridiculous because they all just turned up in bikinis and we're all there in our jeans and sweaters. You just get used to it. But we haven't had much chance this year. I mean, May has gone from frosts a couple of weeks ago to a heat wave. So I don't know how the plants manage, bless them. Now, some bad news. My only larkspur has died. And I was so excited to tell you about this last week. I had one larkspur that germinated in a tray in the greenhouse. I was at the point of throwing the tray out of the door and spotted it. And I thought, this is amazing. And in 3 days, it has died, which is very disappointing. Completely shriveled up in the greenhouse, even though I've been watering everything. So very, very disappointing about that. Might just give up on those guys completely. Now, today I popped in to see my wedding and event florist in her studio. She's got a couple of weddings on this weekend that I am clearly not remotely ready for. And she'd been up there doing all of her arrangements. And she's so talented. We are going to record this interview next week. So you have a few more days if you would like to ask any questions. It's not too late. And I'll be putting the questions that have been submitted already to her, and we will go through all of those. And she's very much looking forward to doing that. And she's such a talented designer. She really is. I was just blown away. It's just so amazing to see flowers and then see what a talented florist does with them. It's quite extraordinary. Now, she introduced me to a new rose today. Quite a life-changing moment. I'm on a hunt for this. I have not been able to find a UK supplier of it. So that's going to be pretty epic. It's called White O'Hara, or there's a pink O'Hara as well. Now, it's a Delbard. It's a French Delbard rose, and it has got the most incredible scent. I mean, it looks beautiful, but Joe said to me, just go and stick your nose in that one because most of the imports don't smell. This one smells absolutely incredible. And there was just something kind of different about the smell. I couldn't pinpoint it either. Incredible. So I'm going on a massive hunt for that. Now, thank you very much for your Spotify comments. Like I said, I am getting better at checking the Spotify comments. And so I had two that I wanted to mention tonight. One from Dawn, who is trying to balance getting her cool season annuals planted whilst also direct sowing the tender ones and having topsoil delivered at the same time. And I totally resonate with this. I'm kind of calling this period of time the tightrope zone, because I'm completely torn between tasks of equal importance. How do I prioritize everything? Everywhere I look is something screaming for attention. And, I have to work at the same time as doing the cut flower business because it does not support me at the moment. And I do try and see friends. I need time to fix things. Things go wrong with the car. It needs fixing. I need time to get supplies, do a food shop. And there just aren't enough hours in the day at the moment. And it is such a tightrope between trying to balance all of these different things. But, being nitty gritty like Dawn is, this balance between just dealing with your hardy annuals, your cool season annuals, and your tenders is also quite tricky. And I'm normally in my local shop or garage at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, panic buying things because I haven't had time to go to the supermarket. There's also all these different watering calculations to be made, which I will come back and talk about that later. And there's just, it feels like if I make one false move or one wrong move or decision at this time of year, it could have a really, really damaging, costly impact. And I don't have an answer to that because I try and prioritize things ruthlessly. I'm incredibly organized. It does make me a bit boring and a bit militant at this time of year. I normally have a schedule that's like planned out with sort of every 30 minutes planned out. So it doesn't leave much room for spontaneity and fun. And I'm constantly apologizing for that at this time of year. So yes, that is the tightrope zone. That's what I'm calling that. And then my second comment was a lovely comment from Rebecca in New Zealand. She's a new listener, and she messaged to say she was kind of relating to what I'd spoken about dealing with negative comments, because it happens to everybody at some point. And so thank you to Rebecca for her kind words about the podcast as well. I love hearing from you, and that's really, really nice. So thank you for taking the time to drop those comments in. So what's happening on the field? Well, my saponaria are finally all pointing in the same direction, which is upwards. And this is pretty epic because they have been the funniest seedlings I've ever grown. They kind of put on a bit of growth, then they just tilted over. Then they started growing in another direction. And I'm just looking at them thinking, what on earth are you guys doing? How am I going to net you or stake you, or just what is this all about? Because everybody else just goes straight up. Very, very odd. And they got planted out, I don't know, I can't even remember when, a week, 10 days ago. And literally only in the last 2 days, they have managed to point themselves upwards. Hugely exciting news. I realized that I'd planted the wrong Clarkia out. I realized that today. I think I mentioned this in the last episode that the Clarkia, well, these are the ones that I squashed under the water butt when I was trying to water them just before I planted them. And they just seemed very small and quite baby-like, and I couldn't get my head around why. And when I checked in the greenhouse, I realized I've actually planted out the wrong tray of Clarkia. So when I was doing this initial planting, I took all the plants up from the greenhouse, or actually technically from the hardening off table outside the greenhouse, took them all up to the field in crates, and then didn't get around to planting some of them. So I left them in a crate on the field, and the Clarkias just had a bit of a crisis. They were really, really unhappy. I thought, well, this is odd because they've been hardened off for over a week at home. There shouldn't be any difference between being at home but being here. So I thought, well, never mind. I'll take you home. I'll put you back in the greenhouse. You can just recover yourself, and then I'll just bring you back another day. Well, I did that, and then I obviously brought the wrong tray back. So what I actually planted out last week or earlier this week are some baby Clarkia that have not been hardened off. So no wonder they look so shell shocked. And the ones that were sown earlier and should be on the field are on the back on the hardening off table. So they're just very confused. They've had a day trip out and they've come home and they've just been left on the table. But that at least solves that mystery about why the ones that are on the field don't look quite as good as they should do, because they're not ready to be up there. Now, I found that I've got 3 more alliums coming up, which gives me a grand total of 9 alliums out of 100 bulbs. So it's better than 6, but not quite as good as it should have been. Now, watering. I'm going to talk about this briefly. It's pertinent because of the hot weather that we're having at the moment and lack of water. I mean, we did have water last week. It was great, but not enough. And we're not having any for over a week now. So I do get asked this sometimes, what do I do about my watering? Well, I'm only watering my newly planted annuals. The new perennials that went in the autumn last year, and the climbing roses. So these guys get watered every day, once a day, in the evening as well. And I do it when I go up to put the birds to bed. I go up way before the birds have to go to bed, give them their tea, and then I go off and do all this other stuff on the field. And then I put the birds to bed, and some of the youngsters, they just don't even want to go to bed. They're like classic teenagers. All the old birds just go straight in, get in their right places, and the teenagers are just running around outside thinking it's the middle of the day. So I do my watering in the evening, and sometimes if it looks like we're going to have super dry conditions for a really long time, then I might have a bit of a wobble and water things like the bearded iris or the peonies, or what else would I do as a special treat? It really is a special treat. No, that is probably about the extent of it. Oh, and the sweet peas get done every day anyway. The sweet peas are really struggling this year. They're not happy. I don't know what it is. The ones I had last year were well, they did incredibly well, and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I grow sweet peas normally in my own garden, but I didn't know about growing them on any kind of scale. So I made all sorts of decisions, and it was just sheer luck. They just turned out to be amazing. And they got watered twice a day with the water from the duck water that I throw away twice a day. And they just grew really well. The lot this year, which I've painstakingly chosen with great care and spent an awful lot of money on, just really not doing very well. Not least because Shirley dug a whole load up yesterday when I wasn't there, but they just don't seem to be flourishing, and I don't think they're going to like this heat. And the soil just doesn't seem, I don't know, the duck water just doesn't seem to be getting to them. There's something that it just is not clicking this year. So that is very disappointing. But generally speaking, it's the hardy annuals that get watered. And I don't actually have any tender annuals out yet, but there'll be some going out. And these new perennials, which are putting on a lot of growth. And they only went in the autumn, October, November time. So they haven't really had long to kind of get their roots down, but they're clearly very happy. But because I know they're very small plants, I know that the roots aren't going to be massively down in the ground, whereas obviously the older perennials, they've got a much bigger root structure and they've got more ability to capture water around them. Now, and that's why I don't spoil them, because I know that they've got a deep enough root ball to be able to sort themselves out. So the roots, obviously, as you know, naturally go down in search of water and nutrients, and also to anchor all the top growth. And sometimes watering things can sometimes cause the roots to just kind of hover near the surface, really waiting for water. I see this a lot in gardens where there are irrigation systems. And I saw a really, really bad one, I don't know, 8 years or so, something like that, where an irrigation system had been laid at the same time as the planting. And there were just roots absolutely everywhere on the surface, like nothing had made an effort to go down, because all of the water was just on the surface, and so they just didn't bother. And it was just really not good, because it was, you could literally see them on the soil surface. So generally speaking, I'm not a huge fan of irrigation systems. I can see where they have the benefits, but I find if you're not really, really careful with them, you can cause more problems with it than if you don't have a system. So I prefer to do my planting jobs and then I water everything in at the beginning, and then after a few months, that's it. They're good to go. They should be sorting themselves out. You want plants that are tough and robust and resilient and get their own resources rather than just waiting on water to be provided for them. And sometimes it just causes them to be really huge plants as well. Sometimes they just grow massively because there's nothing kind of holding them back, if you like. There's nothing natural. You're basically creating like a fake environment for them. And sometimes they just grow extraordinarily big, like they outgrow their space, and somebody somewhere has worked out all of the plant spacings and designed accordingly based on a natural kind of situation. If you add sort of copious amounts of water to that, there's nothing really to slow them down. So they often get too big for their spaces and it all just gets a little bit chaotic. So that's not a technique that I'm a fan of, which is why I'm not watering my perennials. I'm not watering tons of stuff because it will just get on with it. Now, I'm off grid, and so I don't have any water or electricity on the site anyway. So I have to store water, but I then can't pump it around the field yet. And I say yet because I have been looking at a device to draw water out of the IBCs, so the big water bowsers. So I saw a fantastic reel from one of my favorite Instagram accounts, actually, 57th Parallel Gardening. And I just see lots of things that I absolutely love on the Instagram. And the grower has got this system where she's got a borehole and she dropped a pump into the borehole and she's able to pump water out, which is just genius. So I was thinking, well, how can I do that? My other half has a pump, but he won't let me use it because he thinks I'm going to break it or clog the filter or do something, which is highly likely. So I was actually looking in a brochure, one of those brochures for gardening things that you get in the back of newspapers and stuff, full of really helpful things that you can use around your home. I always love stuff like that. You can pick up some genius stuff. Anyway, there was like a pressure washer or a power washer in there, which had a pump that you could put into something like one of my water bowsers. And it has a 10-meter hose, and then you basically, it's something that you could jet wash your own patio at home or jet wash your own car, or you don't have to have the jet facility. You can just have the water coming out in a spray. And it was very reasonably priced for what it is. It was about £70 or something. I think this pump that my other half has bought was a couple of £100, which is why he won't let me anywhere near it. I'm not even allowed to borrow it under supervision. I mean, I'm just not allowed to touch it. So I thought, well, £60 for something, and if it's not good enough, I'll just send it back. So I'm looking at that. But it's one of those decisions, there's money needing to be spent all over the place on netting, on staking, on supports, on more road pins. I need some ericaceous compost for these lily bulbs I bought, which are getting started in a normal compost, but I am well aware that is not the right thing for them. So the point being, there's loads of money that needs to go on lots of different things. So I'm going to carry on with the hand watering for now, but I do have my eye on this thing. Now, I water, as I say, I water in the evenings. I used to have this rule, and I kind of still do in a way, but I certainly do for the seedlings, which is that I don't like plants going to bed with wet feet. So I do like watering in the morning, but timings in the morning are a bit tight. So these guys get watered in the evening. And where possible, I water the soil, not the plant. So it's not as simple as it sounds, quite honestly, because the annuals, I've planted them all really close together. So it's not actually that possible. But with anything else, I keep the water off the plant and I just water the soil. And there's lots of reasons for doing that. I mean, obviously, leaf scorch is not going to be an issue because I'm watering in the evening, but I don't like splashing water all over the plants. If there are any fungal spores or any pests on anything and you start covering the whole plant in water, you risk spreading things from one place to another. So I like to just keep the water nice and low on the soil or the mulch and cuts down on wastage. And ideally, obviously, I would want the soil to be as moisture retentive and have the right texture in the first place to hold the water. There's no point, having all these grand plans if you've got like a sandy soil or you've got clay soil. I'm lucky in the way in a way that I don't have those. I've got a very nice loamy soil, and I'm incredibly lucky. Like, it's not down to me, it's just literally good luck. And so the soil generally is moisture retentive anyway. If the surface looks dry for the areas that don't get mulched, but if I stick a knife in and just have a ferret about, it's fantastic underneath, which is how everybody's just managing so well. And the plants just don't require massive volumes of water. Even if I had it, it's not my policy, so that's not what I'm going to do. And I'm working my way through mulching as much of the beds as I possibly can to stop the surface drying out in the first place. And if you're not sure about your watering, I always say, just like, stick your hands in, literally go get a knife or some kind of blade. I think is better than using a trowel or a fork or a spade, unless you've got space, obviously, and just stick the knife in, or a horry if you've got one of those, and just stick it in, prise the ground open, and just stick your fingers in and see what it's like. And I like to have a little bit of something stuck on my fingers when I take my fingers out, if that makes sense. It's one of those awful things. If you know, you know, that's terrible. But you do, like, if you just kind of can gauge the level of the moisture in the soil by doing that. And I think it's important to do it every now and then, because sometimes you can be fooled, or I can be fooled, if the surface is very dry and you think, oh my goodness, I need to water this so much, and actually you might not need to. So it's still worth checking. You can also get a soil moisture gauge as well, which you can stick in the soil, which will give you a reading as well. So that's me, and that's the watering. Now, that may all go out of the window if these apocalyptic temperatures prove very testing for all of the plants up there. But I think that everything apart from the babies that have gone out this year is going to be absolutely fine. But I will let you know next week. Now, plant profile of the week this week is Clarkia. And I have to confess, I had to look all of this up because this is the first year that I have ever grown Clarkia. And if you are a regular listener, you'll know I was just in the garden centre buying all my vegetable seeds and saw this pretty packet with pretty pink flowers on and thought, oh, I'm going to buy these and see what happens. Even though the project plan, the spreadsheet thing was all done and dusted and I was not allowed any more, I managed to sneak this packet in. And I had never heard of them, actually. I've known now from looking them up, they're also known as Godetia, which I had heard of. So it's just a naming thing. Now, they're native to Western North America. They grow in open grassland and scrub, often poor quality soil. So that tells me straight away that based on the climates out there, they're going to prefer cooler growing conditions, poorer quality soil, and it's also an early summer flowering plant. So it's not going to appreciate a rich, wet soil. So hopefully it's going to really enjoy my field. Now, why would florists like it? Well, I don't know yet if they do, to be honest. I did not ask my wedding and event florist before I went and bought this packet, so I'm just going to have to see what she says when I've actually got some ready, assuming that the ones that I've held back by accident don't have a wobble and the ones in the field don't get baked and die because they've gone out too soon. We'll have to see. But from what I could understand about looking up this flower, they've got very silky, delicate petals. They've got light and airy stems, which is great for movement. They've got a good vase life, which doesn't really matter for me because I'm very much focused on wedding and event florists, and they're kind of don't need to worry about vase life because they're doing stuff for like one day or just for a weekend. And there are a large range of colours, which is great. For growers, they are good because the seed is pretty inexpensive. I had a lot in a packet. I think it was something ridiculous, like 1,500 seeds in a packet for a couple of pounds. So super, super cheap to grow. And they fill this kind of early summer gap before the really big ticket items like the dahlias start to kick in. Now, when to sow? Well, as always, everything needed sowing last year, which I'm beginning to just... you've got to laugh about it. I think I've said it to you before on the podcast. Whatever time you're sowing it, you're basically either 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years too late. So you have to start everything now for your future self in 5 years' time. But this is one of these cool, hardy annuals, cool season flowers that can be sown the year before you actually want them. So in the autumn, they can be sown the year that you actually want them, which is what I've done. But apparently it's always better to have done everything the year before you actually need them. And they should then flower a bit earlier and you get longer stems. And if my Orlia are anything to go by, I totally am convinced by that argument. And as soon as we get into August, I'm going to start sowing everything like mad. Now, it says here that you're supposed to sow them at temperatures of around 15 to 18 degrees centigrade to germinate. Mine germinated in much cooler temperatures than that, so I'm not sure about that. They need good light levels and don't bury them. This is because the seed is really tiny, and I think it would be quite easy to just completely blanket them if you put compost over the top. So, as you know, I put vermiculite on the top of all of mine, so it's a nice, light, airy layer, and it also is light in color as well. Now, they don't want a fancy compost nitrogen rich soil, which is fine because I don't have that, and they do need support. I'm glad I knew about that because I will make sure that I've got some netting sorted out for that, and not too close together. That's going to be a bit of a fine balance because everybody I've got this year is getting absolutely shoehorned in next to each other. I've gone from one extreme to another because the gaps I had last year were a joke and I was so embarrassed. So everybody's literally cheek by jowl with everybody else this year and they're going to have to get on with it. Worst case scenario, I can always thin them out if it looks like there's going to be a powdery mildew issue or some other problem. So that is Clarkia or Godetia, and I just cannot wait to see what they're like. Actually, well, I don't want to say I am excited. I don't want to get my hopes up on these because we've got off to a bit of a rocky start, me and them already. Not as bad as the rocky start with the larkspur, but you know, these things happen. So I hope that you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are and whatever you're doing. Enjoy the bank holiday weekend in the UK. So we will have Monday off, which is nice. And I will be sunbathing myself silly when I'm not planting things out. But I did have a bit of a wobble about whether I should plant things out in this temperature because I can support everything very well at home in terms of shade protection from the parasol. And obviously I've got mains water, so I can keep everybody watered. So I may very well hold off planting anything else out until at least the following weekend because we are forecast to get rain after that. So everything on the plot at the moment seems to have enjoyed the weather in the last couple of days, which makes me think, go and put them out, they'll be fine. But I just think 32 is just a bit much for new seedlings. I'm just not sure that they're going to be able to support themselves. And there's so much work gone into it for the sake of holding them back for 4 days, I think would probably be the most sensible option. So I will update you on that on Tuesday, but there is still absolutely masses to do on the plot. So when I say I'll be sunbathing, I'll be working on the field in vest and shorts, trying to get a bit of a tan, at the same time as sorting out these horrendous living paths, which are just absolutely wild, and definitely getting rid of some nettles all around the water bowsers. There's always loads to do, as you know, more staking, more netting, all sorts, more weeding, always something to do, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So that's it from me today. Enjoy the weekend. Do please come back and join me next week. You're always very welcome. Okay, all the best. Take care.